All right, this is going to be good. So, over the last week and a half or so, I have made my coach ranking videos for each conference. So I did the SEC, the ACC, the Big Ten, and the Big 12, and I ranked every single coach in those conferences. I did a sort of a tier ranking within each conference, and then I actually ranked them all one through however many coaches there are in each particular conference. And of course, there was a lot of debate and disagreement and discussion and arguments in the comment section of those videos. Obviously, anytime you do a ranking video or any type of top 5, top 10, anything, ranking anything, there's going to be disagreement and debate. That's one of the best parts about college football is the never-ending sort of debates and discussions that revolve around it in various ways. But now I'm going to rank just the top 10 coaches in all of college football. So pulling from all 4 of the major conferences. Of course, the Pac-12 no longer with us. So, again, if you're curious on my rankings for each of the coaches within the conference, you can click back and watch those videos separately. But this is going to be just the top 10 coaches in all of college football. And before I put them up on the screen here, I've got 4 from the SEC, 3 from the Big Ten, 2 from the ACC, and 1 from the Big 12. So I guess we'll just go 10-1 here. Not going to drag it on. At 10, I've got Dan Lanning. Now, he's one of the youngest coaches on this list, at least in terms of how many years he's been a head coach. And he doesn't have any conference titles. He doesn't have any playoff appearances or anything like that. But he has had a very successful first 2 years there. There were only 2 losses last year, of course, coming to eventual playoff team Washington. And now they're moving over to the Big Ten, so it's not going to get any easier for Dan Lanning. But if you look at sort of everything that I consider to be the makeup of a good coach, I think Dan Lanning has it. And let me get this out there, too. Every time I talk about coaches and who's better than who and ranking coaches or whatever, it never fails. I'll get people that show up in the comments and go, well, they just recruit good. Doesn't mean they're a good coach. I don't know how many different times I can say it, and I really don't understand how anybody can be a college football fan and disagree. Recruiting and, acquiring talent, however you want to describe that, traditional recruiting out of high school, now the transfer portal, you even have to re-recruit your own roster from year to year to keep certain players from entering the portal. However you want to describe that process of recruiting or retention or portal or whatever, the process of acquiring talent is part of being a coach at the college level. Now, in the NFL, maybe that's not the case. The NFL is maybe that's more of an actual, on-field coaching league because the talent is more even in the NFL because of the way the draft process works and because of salary caps and because of 53-man rosters and different things like that. It tends to be a more level playing field in the acquiring talent department. Now, some front offices are much better than others. I mean, just think about the NFL draft, right? There are certain franchises in my lifetime that you can just count on blowing the draft almost every single year. The Atlanta Falcons, the Cleveland Browns for a long time, the Raiders for a long time, right? So, and so to a certain degree, the NFL also is about acquiring talent, but it's different at the college level. But to the people that always want to comment, well, they just have the best players. Doesn't mean they're the best. That is, I can make an argument that over 50% of being a college football coach is recruiting. It's the single most important aspect of college football is acquiring talent, okay? I don't care how good of a quote-unquote on-field coach you are or you think some coach is. They're not winning with bad players. It's just not going to happen. I've made the analogy before, and I'll make it again now, and then we'll get right back to this list here. If you took Georgia's entire coaching staff and moved it to Vandy, and you took Vandy's entire coaching staff and moved it to Georgia for this upcoming season, do you really think Georgia would? What do you think? What do you think the records would be of those two teams? Georgia would still have the better record. It's about acquiring players. It's about acquiring talent. Now, I happen to think that Georgia's coaching staff, from a pure coaching standpoint, just also happens to be better than Vanderbilt's coaching staff from a pure talent point. So Maybe Vandy's coaching staff leads Vandy to a 3-9 season, whereas if they had Georgia's coaching staff, they'd win 5 or 6 games. Maybe instead of Georgia winning 10, 11, 12 games, whatever they win, with Vandy's staff, maybe they could win 7 or 8. But acquiring talent is a huge part of being a college football coach, whether you're talking about head coach, position coach, coordinators. You can't separate the two. So to those comments that I know that are coming, you really sound silly. Recruiting is part of being a college football coach, and it's part of the criteria I use in judging coaching. In that area, Dan Lanning knocks it out of the park. He is recruiting at an elite level. He is building what looks a lot like an SEC-style team on the West Coast, building from the inside out, developing the trenches, depth on defense, speed on the outside at the skill positions. They're going to be really, really good under Dan Lanning for a really long time. I don't have any doubt about that at all. Will he get over the hump and finally win a conference? Well, he's going to have to if he wants to eventually move higher on a top 10 list, but I've got him at number 10. Number 9, I've got Kyle Whittingham. Now, Kyle Whittingham is a good example of what acquiring talent or not can get you. Kyle Whittingham's a really good coach. There's no question about it. Won the Pac-12 2 out of the last 3 years. One of the most consistently good programs in the country, Utah, over the last 10 to 15 years under Kyle Whittingham, right? Down year last year, injuries, whatever. Typically, they're a pretty good team. He doesn't have the talent that some of these other teams have. Now, some of that, and this is true, some of that is because it's Utah, okay? And probably Utah's just probably never going to recruit, no matter how good of coaching staff you get in there, no matter how good the recruiters are. They're probably not going to recruit at the level of some of the bigger brand schools. But this is what keeps Utah at 10 and 11 wins and not 14 or 15. It's talent. It's the talent differential between a team like Utah and some of the top programs in the country. But you can't deny their ability over there at Utah, led by Kyle Whittingham, to win a whole lot of games. So I got him at number 9, been doing it for a long time there. I've got Brian Kelly at number 8. Now, I didn't look up total wins, but he may have the most total wins of any coach on this list, with the exception of maybe Dabo Swinney. Dabo Swinney's been a coach, I think, since 2009. Brian Kelly was at Notre Dame going way back. He's got a ton of wins, but he's got 0 major postseason wins. He's played in 2 conference championship games, one at LSU, got blown out by Georgia. Notre Dame during the COVID year was fully in the ACC, made the ACC championship game, got beat by Clemson. He's been in multiple New Year's 6 games, gotten blown out the majority of the time, lost every single time. He's made the playoffs twice, lost both times, got blown out. He made a BCS national championship game back in 2012, got blown out. He's a really good coach, and he wins a lot of games, and he acquires a lot of talent. But he's winless in major postseason games. If you look up just a random list on the internet of top 10 coaches in college football, Kelly is a lot higher on most lists than he is on mine. I'm not knocking Brian Kelly. If you're in the top 10, I think you're a pretty good coach. But I think even if you're an LSU fan right now, you got to, don't you want to win a major postseason game? Of course you do. And so far in Brian Kelly's long career, he's won a lot of regular season games, and he's winless when it comes to major postseason games. He's got to get over that hump. Lincoln Riley, I've got at number 7, the Southern Cal coach. He had a down year this year, losing, I think, 4 games with a returning Heisman quarterback. Just a disastrous year by Lincoln Riley standards for sure. But he's got a bunch of conference titles at Oklahoma. He's got a bunch of playoff appearances. Now, he's lost in every playoff game he's ever played or ever coached in, but he does have a couple of conference titles, and he wins a lot of regular season games. He's got one of the best offenses in the country almost every single year, multiple Heisman winning quarterbacks. He's a good coach. I've got him at number 7. And number 6 and number 5, it gets hard, really. 4, 5, and 6. I've got Dabo Swinney at 6 and Mike Norvell at 5. Dabo Swinney's got more success over his career, clearly, than Norvell does. Norvell's got an ACC championship last year, and that's really it. Dabo's got 2 national titles back in 16 and 18, a ton of ACC championships, undefeated seasons. But these are 2 coaches that, in my opinion, are headed in different directions. I talked a lot about this in the ACC coaching ranking video I did, where I had Norvell as number 1 in the ACC and Dabo as 2. So I'm not going to get into it for 10 minutes here like I did in that video. But these are 2 coaches that are heading in different directions in my mind. Swinney's refusal to acknowledge the transfer portal and some issues around NIL and sort of the new age of college football that we're in, pretending that doesn't exist is just not working at Clemson. They have lost, since 2020, they've lost more games every single season than the year before. So it's a downward trajectory there for Clemson. Florida State, obviously, an upward trajectory. So that's why I've got Norvell ahead of Swinney. I understand that Swinney's got a lot more career accomplishments than Norvell does. But right now, if I'm ranking coaches, I give the edge to Norvell. I've got Sarkisian at 4. Now, he's really only had one good season. I mean, we have to acknowledge that about Sarkisian. He's sort of a lightning rod coach here. Now, I happen to think that he's a really good coach, a great offensive mind, and I like his talent acquisition at Texas. Now, when he got there, they had a lot of talent, but they were missing some talent in some key places, notably along the lines of scrimmage. The quarterback play when he first got there was not the level that it is now with Quinn Ewers. Right now, Sarkisian is one of the best coaches in the country. They've got one of the best rosters in the country. They proved that last year. They knocked off Alabama in the regular season. They went on to win the Big 12 and made the playoffs for the first time. Again, a team, to me, that appears to be headed that way and not dropping off anytime in the immediate future. Now, they're moving into the SEC this year, so we'll see what growing pains, if any, that presents for Texas. But I'm impressed with the job Sarkisian has done there at Texas. I've got DeBoer at 3. Now, I don't count, for my coaching rankings, I don't count anything that doesn't happen in the FBS level at least. Now, I'll give you some credit for group of 5 stuff, right? That's FBS. But so DeBoer's got a bunch of like independent natties and 1AA, whatever that, I don't even consider that. But he did really, really good in 2 years at Washington, and now he's got the head coaching job at Alabama. So he's inheriting a ton of talent. He's definitely got more talent top to bottom on that roster at Bama than he had at Washington. And we saw what he did at Washington last year. Won the Pac-12, made the playoffs, won a playoff game. So, again, a young coach in terms of number of years that he's been around, but a coach that appears to be ascending. We'll see how he handles sort of stepping into the shoes of Nick Saban, but makes sense to have him really high on a top coaching list. I've got Ryan Day at number 2. This is another one that I'm going to catch a lot of flack for. Look, Sharon Moore's never coached a game. I understand the interim coach thing from last year. If you watch my Big Ten coaching ranking video, it's not that I'm necessarily ranking Day ahead of Sharon Moore, even though technically I am. It's that I'm not ranking Sharon Moore at all. He's never been a head coach, ever. I understand filling in for a suspended Jim Harbaugh last season. That's not the same as going to sleep every night knowing you're the head coach of Michigan. So we'll see how Sharon Moore does this year. If Michigan wins 10, 11, 12 games, okay. Then next season when I do this ranking, he's going to be really high up on it. But so I didn't even consider Sharon Moore. Ryan Day specifically, can't win it all, can't win the playoff games, can't beat the SEC. All of that is true. It's also true that he's got 8 losses in like 5 years. That's it. The guy's averaging less than 2 losses a year, okay? He's winning a ton of games. Now, he's got a little bit of Lincoln Riley disease. Now, he does have a conference title, but so does Lincoln Riley. He struggled in the playoffs. They did make one national title game. Was it the COVID year? And they lost, and they have lost to Michigan 3 years in a row. They have lost to Big Ten 3 years in a row. They did lose to Missouri last year in a New Year's Six game. They did lose to Georgia in the playoff. I get all that. But in order to lose a playoff game, you got to get there. And I've got Lincoln Riley on this list. He's never won a playoff game. The reason I've got Ryan Day so much higher than Lincoln Riley is because right now Ryan Day is winning a lot more games than Lincoln Riley is. I mean, Lincoln Riley's coming off a 4 or 5 loss season, whatever it was. Ryan Day is coming off another 11-win regular season. I mean, it just is what it is. Yeah, he lost to Michigan, the eventual national champion, but the guy's won a ton of games. I know Ohio State fans want to get over that Michigan hump. They want to see Ohio State win playoff games. They want the national titles. Day's won everything but that. And I've got him as the number 2 coach in the country right now. And, of course, at number 1, I've got Kirby. And, I'm a Georgia fan, so anytime I talk about Kirby, well, you're just a Georgia fan. You're just a blind homer. You can think whatever you want. But you can Google any list you want of top coaches in college football, and Kirby's number 1 on every single list you look at. Now, you could have made the argument that Kirby was number 1 last year or the year before, even when Nick Saban was still around. Again, Nick Saban's one of the greatest coaches of all time, and Kirby's got a long way to go to catch that on an all-time rankings list of coaches. But in the moment, Kirby has been a better coach in my mind than Saban for the last couple of years. Kirby, has got 2 national titles since Saban won his last one, but Saban's gone now, so that doesn't even factor into this debate here. You can't make a rational argument to have anybody on this list or any other coach anywhere in the country in college football ranked ahead of Kirby Smart. I've got him at number 1. So there you go. That's the top 10 coaches in college football. Let me know down below where you disagree. Have a good morning.